In our world, where everyone strives to understand their place, many questions arise about the nature of reality and our existence. Often we perceive ourselves as more than just a physical body or a set of thoughts. However, what if everything we see and feel is just an illusion that we ourselves are immersed in? And while we spend our efforts trying to change what we think is our destiny, reality itself watches us with mild irony, seeing our futile struggle. There is a certain secret that can turn our understanding of everything that is happening upside down. Perhaps everything has long been predetermined. We, with our inherent human perseverance, believe we are in control of our lives, making plans, creating wish lists, dreaming of a great future, and persistently following our chosen paths. But let's face it, hasn't it happened to each of us that life took an unexpected turn in a completely unpredictable direction? Hasn't it ever happened that after exerting tremendous effort, we ended up not where we had planned? This is the very illusion of control that we so strongly believe in. From childhood, we are taught that our lives are the result of our own efforts. We are taught that hard work will surely lead us to the fulfillment of all our cherished dreams. But what if all of this is just a carefully planned lie? What if we are simply participating in a game where all the rules are written in advance and our role has long been defined? We think we make decisions freely, but what if everything that happens in our lives is just a predetermined path that we inevitably follow? It may seem convenient for some to stick to this way of thinking, but in reality, a person is just an outside observer of his own life, a passive spectator of the events unfolding before him. Any efforts of an individual to influence the course of things resemble a fruitless struggle with the natural elements. Just as a wave of the hand cannot stop the wind, so human efforts cannot change the destined path. The reason for this lies in the fact that everyone's life is a kind of theatrical performance where a person acts not as an author, but as an actor following a pre-written script. He utters his lines and performs his actions, but has no opportunity to change the course of the play. However, this state of affairs is not a tragedy. On the contrary, it can bring a sense of freedom. Imagine no longer having to worry about the future, no need to try to control every aspect of life. One can simply relax and let events take their course without anxiety or fear. A person is like a boat floating on a river that cannot change the current, but can enjoy the journey. Everything that is to happen is already predetermined, and any attempt to change anything is futile. This is not a call to inaction at all, but rather an invitation to liberation. One must let go of all one's ideas about oneself and one's life in order to realize the true nature of things. Before we get into the details, it is worth noting that if the thoughts expressed resonate with the reader, it is worth taking a moment to subscribe and leave a small 6-word comment. This simple action will help those ideas break through the information noise. The author, whose name remains unknown, only aims to convey these important meanings to the audience. By the way, a Telegram channel has been created to which everyone is invited to subscribe in order to stay in touch. After these words of gratitude, we can proceed to a deeper analysis. The question arises, is a person really in control of his or her life? To illustrate this question, it is worth telling a story about one man, let's call him Maxim. He was full of ambition and strived for success, carefully planning his every step. Having chosen a prestigious educational institution, he built a brilliant career and created a strong family. Marrying an attractive woman, everything seemed to be going according to his precise plan. But one day, on the day he was to be appointed director of the company, he was involved in a car accident and became paralyzed. His whole carefully constructed life collapsed in an instant. Some may say that this is just a tragic coincidence, but it is worth thinking about. Every decision Maxim made, every choice he made, inexorably led him to this fateful moment. His relentless pursuit of success made him constantly in a hurry. His self-confidence in a cloudless future dulled his vigilance, making him lose sight of important details. Each step, which he thought was a personal choice, was in fact a link in the chain of events leading him inexorably to the fateful moment. And here's the paradox. After the terrible accident, Maxim's life was transformed, but not in the way one might assume. He opened new horizons for himself, found a deep meaning and a clear purpose. Maxim dedicated himself to helping people with disabilities, wrote a heartfelt book that inspired thousands of hearts. And most surprisingly, he found happiness that surpassed all his previous successes. Was this tragedy just an accident, or was it the necessary push that directed Maxim to his true destiny? Have you ever wondered why events seemingly impossible and even contradictory happen in our lives? Perhaps our whole life is just a pre-written script, where every event, every appearance in this world is not an accident. Perhaps everything that happens to us is only the unfolding of our destiny, which was determined long before we were born. We were once led to believe that we are the masters of our own destiny, but is it really so? The claim that we are the masters of our own destiny is often just a beautifully soothing phrase. Reality, however, shows a much more complex and fascinating picture. There is a belief that all of our life paths are already predetermined. It may seem that we are the architects of our lives, making decisions that change its trajectory, but perhaps we are just passengers following a predetermined route. Like a train traveling along the tracks, we can watch the scenery outside the window, chat with fellow travelers, but the destination is already determined. Regardless of our actions, the destination remains the same. This realization generates a strange mixture of fear and relief. The idea that we have never been in control can be frightening, but it also provides a kind of liberation. Our attempts to resist fate, tossing and turning and worrying, are just an illusion. Everything happens according to a predetermined scenario, and we remain only observers watching the development of events. And in this predetermination, paradoxically, lies a kind of freedom. There is no longer a need to worry and fruitless attempts to take control of the situation. One can afford to relax because all events are unfolding according to some original plan. The question may arise, how can one come to terms with the lack of control over what is happening? The answer is actually quite simple. You don't need to resign, you just need to accept this fact. Take it as a given that all actions and decisions are part of some big game, like watching a movie. The viewer can empathize with the characters, hope for their right choice, but he realizes that the ending is already predetermined. This is the essence of predetermination. A man cannot change his fate, but he can change his attitude to it. One should stop fighting against what has already been decided. When one realizes that control is just an illusion, it becomes clear that events do not depend on personal efforts. One can make every effort, but life will still unfold according to one's own scenario, not according to someone else's wishes. However, the attitude to these events is entirely in the hands of a person. When the senseless struggle against the inevitable stops and acceptance as a given comes, the world appears in a completely different light. A person can experience a storm of emotions, resisting the inevitable, resenting and complaining about the injustice of fate. But such actions, as a rule, lead only to internal discomfort and mental anguish. All these feelings arise from the unwillingness to accept the fact that there are circumstances that are beyond human control. It is like trying in vain to swim against a powerful river current, forgetting that the natural element is always stronger. Paradoxically, however, when an individual accepts his life in its entirety with all its ups and downs, when he ceases to struggle fruitlessly with reality, he finds that he is no longer plagued by anxiety. All the factors that previously caused stress seem to lose their power and cease to have power over him. The person ceases to react to what is happening as if external circumstances can control his life. And this is true liberation from the bondage of suffering. Every event that happens in life is just a fait accompli. The task of each person is to choose his own reaction to this event. The reaction can be different. One can be despondent and sad because things did not go according to plan, or one can wisely accept the situation, saying to oneself, yes, this is not what I wanted, but it is exactly what had to happen. When one realizes that all events in life are subject to some higher laws, which are not always available to the human mind, there is calmness in the soul. Let us consider an ordinary situation for illustration. Imagine that a person has lost his job. The initial reaction, as a rule, is panic and fear of the unknown. The question arises what to do next. The world around them seems to be crumbling. However, instead of giving in to despair, you can try to look at this situation as a necessary step on the way to something new. You can assume that this event is part of a larger life plan and something more significant and favorable is ahead. Perhaps this very loss will be the impetus for new opportunities and prospects. Therein lies the power of acceptance. It is important to realize that the events themselves are not decisive, and the key role is played by the reaction to them. It is necessary to learn to accept what is happening. This is where true freedom is discovered, not in the desire to control everything around you, but in the refusal of these fruitless attempts. Acceptance is the path to inner balance, to the realization that there is no reason for fear if you let things unfold naturally. Imagine a person standing on the bank of a river. Imagine a person desperately wading into the river waters, swimming hard against the powerful current. He seeks some ideal shore which seems to him to be the only true place. But the river, with its incommensurably greater power, inexorably carries him where he is destined to go. The man can resist as much as he likes, exhaust himself with struggle, grumble at injustice, but the current will not change its direction because of his vain efforts. And now imagine a different picture. The same person, instead of struggling, lets himself go to the will of the water element. He floats, but without strain, letting the river carry him, trusting its wisdom and conviction that it will lead him to the right place. This is acceptance, a deep understanding that everything has its own way. The river, like fate, always knows where it leads, and always has. Acceptance is in no way synonymous with passivity. It does not mean sitting idly by. On the contrary, it means doing what is necessary, but without internal resistance or unnecessary struggle. One accepts any possible outcome because one realizes that everything happens as it should. This realization gives true freedom. As a wise mentor once told his disciple, if you seek peace of mind, stop trying to control what is beyond your control. The young man was deeply moved by this revelation. He realized that we waste enormous resources of time and energy trying to control what is essentially beyond our control. We are plagued by fear of loss, fear of missing opportunities, but in the end, all events unfold according to a predetermined scenario. The only choice we have is to either accept this inevitable course of events or condemn ourselves to agonizing suffering. It is in this irresistible desire to control that the root of our misery lies. We cling with desperate strength to our expectations and desires, which in fact are only an illusion of power over circumstances. But this imaginary control only exacerbates our inner restlessness. But what happens if we loosen our grip? What if we let go of our hopes and let life take its course without resistance? Then we would see our fears dissolve, our anxiety disappear like morning fog. Acceptance is not a sign of weakness, but rather a victory over our own delusions. We stop fighting a pointless battle against what we cannot change. We allow events to develop according to their own laws. And it is in this state of humility that we find true freedom. Our life turns from an endless struggle into a harmonious flow. And in this flow, we find a wonderful peace and tranquility. We no longer feel that we are victims of circumstances because we realize that we cannot be victims of what is already destined. Man's freedom lies not in the variety of roads, but in his manner of following his chosen path. Man is free to choose the path of resistance or the path of acceptance. And so, when an individual accepts the inevitability of what is happening, he suddenly discovers something remarkable, an inner serenity. This inner serenity is not the product of struggle or self-abuse. It is born from the elementary understanding that whatever is destined to happen will inevitably happen. Man's task is not to control the course of events. His true purpose is to observe the course of life and respond to its manifestations. When a person stops resisting his destiny, a marvelous transformation takes place. He finds harmony. All his anxieties, fears, and torments disappear because there is no need for control. There is no longer the question, what if? All these hypothetical scenarios lose their relevance, for there is the realization that everything goes its own way, and it does not depend on personal effort. Acceptance is the elimination of fear of the future. There is no longer a need to constantly look back at the past, regretting what could have happened if we had chosen differently. There's no point in worrying about tomorrow, because whatever is going to happen will inevitably happen. The predetermination of the coming day, as soon as the realization of this fact penetrates into consciousness, deprives fears of the future of their former power. Man is free to continue his actions, to make plans, but now with the understanding that the final result is already predetermined. He continues to participate in the game of life, indulging himself in the illusion of control while the finale is already known. And it is this revelation that gives him unperturbed peace. There is no longer any need to worry that not all aspects of the future are in sight. Life has a broader vision and leads man on his own path. Let us imagine for a moment that the individual is free from worries about tomorrow. He accepts each moment for what it is, allowing life to unfold. What feelings will this engender? Freedom is not just the absence of fetters, it is the realization that there is no longer a need to control one's own life. One simply lives, trusting, watching events unfold on their own. Can anything go wrong? But in reality, the concept of not according to plan does not exist. Everything goes as it should go, and a person's task is not to resist this flow, but to enjoy it. When a person stops clinging to his own desires and obsessive expectations, a truly amazing metamorphosis happens to him. He begins to notice the subtle details of the world around him that previously escaped his attention. He penetrates deeper into the essence of each moment, feeling its fullness and uniqueness. He gains the ability to understand the motives and feelings of others. And most importantly, when a person stops expecting something specific from life, every moment of his existence turns into a priceless gift. This is one of the great paradoxical truths of existence. The more we let go, the more we receive in return. When we stop dwelling on expected outcomes, life begins to give us surprises we never dreamed of. This happens because we begin to accept life as it is, with all its twists and turns. We stop imposing our rules and prejudices on it, and it starts to reveal its secrets and wonders to us in return. However, it is important to realize that letting go does not mean giving up or giving up on an active life. It means letting go of the need to be in constant tension and struggle. A person continues to act, to strive for goals, but without undue pressure on himself, with the understanding that everything goes his way. How many times in our lives have we worried and worried that something might go wrong, that our plans might fall through? Surely each of us has faced a situation when carefully made plans suddenly crashed on the harsh reality. And how much energy and nerves were spent on worrying about it? What if you could just let go of these negative emotions, Imagine how much time and energy would be freed up if we stopped wasting it worrying about what's coming. Perhaps then our lives would flow in a more peaceful and harmonious way. The reason for these experiences is that our thoughts sometimes become anchors that keep us either in the past or in the future and prevent us from enjoying the present moment. And it is the present that is the only reality we possess. It is in the present moment, here and now, that we have everything we need to be happy. Letting go of obsessive thoughts about the future, we suddenly realize that all our worries and anxieties were in vain. We are free at this very moment, we just did not realize it before. All fears and expectations are just illusions created by our mind, which have no real power over us. We just need to let them go, and then it will become obvious that life is much simpler and more beautiful than we used to think. The real power lies in acceptance. One ceases to feel fear. The desire to run away from possible twists and turns of fate disappears. There are no more attempts to change what is destined. Instead, he simply immerses himself in the flow of life, trusting its flow, and in this trust finds the inner peace that has always been an integral part of him. Probably everyone has at least once wondered, if everything is predetermined, then what is there to strive for? Why take any action if the result is already known? At first glance, this idea may seem paradoxical, but that is where the depth of understanding lies. Life is a dynamic process, and man is not a bystander, but an active participant, playing his unique role in this continuous action. One can envision oneself as an actor playing his part in the majestic production called life. One's actions are important not to change the final outcome, but to maximize the quality of one's role. Although the final outcome is predetermined, how one lives each moment is of utmost importance. Let's imagine that a person is in a theater. He knows that at the end of the performance the curtain will fall and the audience will go home. But what makes the performance exciting? The development of the storyline and the emotional experiences of the characters on stage serve as a reflection of real life. What truly matters is everyone's personal involvement in the process. What matters is how one reacts to what is happening, how one overcomes difficulties, and how one interacts with others. It is not about the ability to change what is destined, but about the ability to live each moment with full commitment. Realizing this fact brings liberation from excessive attachment to results. One stops worrying about everything happening perfectly and focuses on the present moment. He lives in the here and now, accepting each event as it comes, with the understanding that everything goes his way. This is his role, which he can fulfill with complete dedication, enjoying every moment without worrying about the future. When one realizes that life is not a final goal, but a continuous process, everything changes dramatically. A person stops depending on results and living in expectation. Instead, he begins to appreciate every detail, every step on his life's journey, finding true joy in it. This is what true existence is all about. And here is the key point. By giving up too much control, one does not lose one's inner power. Rather, he gains true strength, the ability to be in harmony with the world around him, the ability to respond to any challenge of fate with prudence and equanimity. One can be assured that everything goes as it should, and this eliminates tension, fear, and stress. Let us imagine an existence free from fear of what is to come. Imagine no more doubts about what will happen in the future, because there is an understanding. Everything that happens is already predetermined and leads to what really matters. In such an existence, there is no room for anguish over uncertainty. Man ceases to be a toy in the hands of fate. He is free in every moment. After all, his task is not to change the course of events, but to live them with full awareness. Every moment is part of a great design. And when this realization comes, anxiety about the future disappears. One no longer holds on to results, no longer suffers because something has not gone according to plan. The individual simply exists. When an individual comes to the realization that everything is predetermined, he gains what he has been striving for all his life: freedom. It is freedom from oppressive fear, from exhausting tension, from a false sense of control. It is freedom from the burden he has placed on himself, naively believing that everything is within his power. It is this delusion that is the root cause of anxiety. It is worth recognizing that man spends much of his journey trying to change what cannot be changed. He worries about what is to come, reproaches himself for past mistakes, and very rarely enjoys the present moment. He pursues illusions, chasing after things that either have not yet happened or are forever in the past. But as soon as one realizes that everything that should have happened has already happened, this exhausting race stops. Man breaks out of this meaningless cycle. Each of his actions, each of his thoughts is an integral part of something more global, and he is not given to see the whole picture, nor does he need to, for the purpose of the mind is not to plan fate, but to live it. True liberation comes when a person stops trying to figure out every detail, every turn of life's path, and simply begins to trust the natural course of things. The essence is this: acceptance is not passive inaction, but, on the contrary, active participation in life, but without fear and obsessive desire for total control. One continues to act in accordance with one's beliefs and desires, but without undue stress. Realizing that everything will work out in the best possible way gives freedom of action. Children, as a prime example, live in the present moment without worrying about the future or dwelling on what is to come. They simply enjoy life, embracing each moment with joy and curiosity. This is where their strength lies. They don't seek to control everything around them to achieve happiness. They are just happy. The challenge for everyone is to learn to do the same, to learn to live as if every moment is a precious gift, not a test of fate. Acceptance does not remove responsibility for one's life, but frees one from the illusion of omnipotence. One acts but does not allow anxiety to paralyze one. A person constantly strives to achieve his goals, but does not feel disappointed if circumstances are different, because he realizes that not everything is not under his control. Accepting life in all its diversity, he begins to notice that any event, even seemingly unfavorable at first glance, eventually leads to positive changes. At first, such a worldview may seem difficult, but with time comes the realization that everything that happens guides a person in the right direction. Trust in this process allows one to realize that every turn of fate is not an accident, but an important part of the overall plan. A person gains freedom when he stops clinging to specific desires and results. This does not mean giving up aspirations, but rather giving up the dependence of one's well-being on their realization. Happiness ceases to be tied to external factors. The inner realization that happiness has always been within, independent of external circumstances, brings considerable relief. One stops chasing after phantom goals that one thought would make one happy. Man exists by allowing events to unfold in their natural course, and it is at this point that everything he has ever dreamed of comes to him. This happens because he no longer seeks total control over the world around him. Acceptance of life in all its fullness and variety is the highest expression of freedom, giving a sense of inner harmony. When this freedom is achieved, fear of the future or regrets about the past no longer torment the soul. One simply lives, realizing that all events are predetermined, and one's task is not to fight against this order, but to enjoy every moment. Life should not be perceived as a battlefield where one has to fight for a place under the sun, but as a mesmerizing dance. It is not a competition where one should constantly strive for success and new achievements. but a graceful dance where every step is a manifestation of inner freedom. In dance, there is no final goal to strive for, no finish line to cross. There is only movement happening here and now. When a person trusts life, when he lets go of trying to control every aspect of it, his movements in this dance become easy and effortless. He no longer worries about where this dance will take him. He simply moves in the rhythm of life, and this movement brings him joy and satisfaction. Life, in essence, is not a pursuit of a specific endpoint, but rather an exciting journey where every moment, every movement along the way has its own value. Even if the path leads to unexplored distances beyond the boundaries of habitual understanding, it is still an integral part of the overall dance of life. When one is freed from the restraining fear of what is to come, one finds the freedom to fully express oneself. Imagine how life would be transformed if the eternal fear of the future disappeared, if one let go of all the expectations that keep one on a short leash. What would each day be like if there was no worry about tomorrow? In that case, one would be able to fully enjoy the present moment without burdening oneself with regrets about the past and worries about the future. Perhaps now these reflections seem contradictory to the attitudes that have been instilled since childhood. We were taught to strive for goals, to earn our place in the sun. But perhaps it is time to reconsider these ingrained attitudes. Perhaps constant struggle is not the path that will lead to true happiness and harmony. Perhaps true happiness comes when one simply accepts oneself for who one is. Every moment of existence is a unique opportunity to dance in harmony with the rhythms of the universe. This dance does not involve making grandiose plans, but rather invites one to live each day fully and consciously. There is no need to try to hold on to every step, but rather to trust the flow of events that are already happening. The very word trust seems simple, but it is the word that opens the gateway to true freedom. When a person trusts life, it begins to unfold before him in all its glory, exceeding all the most daring expectations. All previous attempts to control the unknown have only been futile endeavors. But when acceptance of this uncertainty comes, when a person allows it to behave, he begins to realize how multifaceted and amazing the world around him is. Real miracles begin not when one desperately expects them, but when one stops expecting them. Not when he tries to force something into his life, but when he simply lets go of control and trusts the natural course of events. It is at this point that life begins to present surprises that a person could not even dream of. A person must surrender to the power of life and let it guide his path. His destiny is not to control all events like a conductor of an orchestra, but to enjoy the melody of his existence. There is no need to worry about the future, for he is already in the center of the flow of life, moving in its rhythm. When this realization comes, there is true freedom. All predetermined events are bound to happen. This knowledge does not constrain, but on the contrary, frees you from unnecessary worries. Now one can live without looking back with regret into the past and without fear of tomorrow. Everything is already decided from above, and the role of man is to let life unfold as it is. One should trust its flow and float on the waves of fate. It is at the moment of letting go of control that life begins to gift a person much more generously than he could have imagined. He is a participant in a game without predetermined rules. Everything that happens to him may seem random, meaningless, or even unfair. But there is already an understanding that randomness is only an illusion. A person is not here to fight the wind or rewrite his life script. His task is to accept everything as it is and learn to play by the rules that life offers. Human existence is not a straightforward movement from a starting point to an ending point. Rather, it is an intricate ornament where each turn, though seemingly predetermined, remains hidden from the observer's eyes. The true beauty of this journey lies in the ignorance of the next step. Of course, this uncertainty can be unsettling, but it is in this uncertainty that true freedom lies, to keep moving without having a full idea of the future, to trust without understanding all the circumstances. Each new moment opens up before us like an uncharted page, and this should not cause fear, but rather encouragement. After all, it is in this unpredictability that our independence lies. Past decisions do not constrain us. Every moment offers an opportunity to make a new choice. Although the end result is beyond our control, we are free to choose our perception of each individual moment. One can either suffer when events do not unfold as planned, or accept it as an integral part of a grand design that has yet to be realized. One should see life as a vast field where there are no concepts of victory and defeat, right and wrong. There is only the path that each individual chooses for himself and how he manifests himself on that path. The presented life path is not a random coincidence of circumstances, but an integral part of a grandiose game in which each of us is a participant. The true goal in this action is not to win or to admit defeat, but to gain the ability to enjoy the process of the game itself. As soon as one realizes this fact, all fear disappears. A person ceases to strive for specific, predetermined goals because he realizes that all future events are already predetermined from above. All that remains is to surrender to the flow of the game. In this perception, every obstacle is not an insurmountable obstacle, but an opportunity for personal growth, a chance to see the world from a new, broader perspective. When life is perceived as a game, a person is freed from attachment to the final result. The goal becomes not to achieve something concrete, but to live each moment as fully as if it were the most important in life. And what is amazing is that when the control loosens, when the clinging to the future disappears, and the focus shifts to the present, life itself begins to adjust to the person in a surprising way. It may seem paradoxical, but as soon as you stop trying to control every step, the universe starts to get involved in the game, as if becoming a partner in this fascinating process. Life gives us surprises like a generous sorceress, opening doors before us that we had not noticed before, because we have stopped constraining it with our expectations. Fears that something will not go according to plan recede because we realize that everything is unfolding as it should. This is the true power. Man ceases to be a toy in the hands of fate, becoming its master, not in the sense of controlling events, but in controlling his perception. Everything is in his power, and at the same time, nothing is under his control. In this great paradox lies freedom. All previous attempts to control or change the world around us were only part of a larger game. Man sought to control life, to achieve results, believing that he could influence the course of events. But in the end, everything turned out the way it was meant to. This is not a weakness, not a delusion, but just a natural course of life. And so the circle closes, returning to the original truth. What is destined to happen will happen, and no matter how hard one tries, it will inevitably happen. In fact, it is not an apprehension, but rather a sense of relief. It is a release from the oppressive tension that one has been experiencing in an effort to keep everything under unrelenting control. Now one realizes that total control is nothing more than self-deception, a mirage. True freedom lies not in trying to control one's every move, but in the ability to let the flow of life carry one's self. There comes a moment when you can finally relax and just stay in the present, here and now, without looking back with regret at the past and without making vain plans for the future. The future will announce itself, and to some extent it is already predetermined. Man's task is to enjoy this moment, each unique moment as it is. This is true freedom, to live without fear of what has not yet happened, to live without the compulsive desire to change what is beyond change. Everyone is always on his own destined path, and that path leads exactly where he needs to go. A person's task is not to try to turn from this path, not to look for detours, but to trust that life itself knows where it is guiding him. And when a man finally lets go of this endless control, when he allows himself to simply be, he will find that life is full of unexpected turns, and they were all destined for him from the very beginning. Liberation has already taken place, though not previously realized. This realization becomes a turning point, marking the beginning of a whole new phase of life. From now on, there is no need to restrain oneself. One can simply go with the flow, enjoying every moment. This is where the story ends, leaving behind a feeling of lightness and freedom. A farewell, like a hug, concludes this little monologue, coming from the one who chose to remain nameless.